Mungiki, an underground government with ironclad power. Kamjesh, a chaotic network spreading fear. Who poses the greater threat? Today, we delve into the clash between Kenya's two most notorious criminal organizations, examining how they operate and the terrifying impact they leave behind. This is not just a story about crime, but also a reminder of the social injustices that gave rise to these forces. The story of Mungiki and Kamjesh is not simply a confrontation between two criminal organizations, but a clear testament to how power and survival are organized in the underworld. To understand this, we need to start from the core, their organizational structures. Mungiki is a true underground empire. Originating from Kikuyu traditions, it was once a cultural religious movement aimed at reviving national identity. However, over time, that goal became distorted. From traditional values, Mungiki gradually transformed into a paramilitary organization with a tightly knit structure and a clear hierarchy. Within Mungiki, every member must strictly obey orders from superiors. They operate not only under the control of supreme leaders but are also bound by mystical rituals and absolute oaths of loyalty. This very element makes Mungiki an organization that is not easily dismantled. New members are recruited through religious and mystical rituals, creating a sense of attachment and grand mission. They are not just individuals joining a criminal organization but guardians of cultural heritage, at least as they portray themselves. This not only enhances loyalty but also allowed Mungiki to leverage the trust of the Kikuyu community during its early development. But this loyalty does not come without a price. Mungiki members are often required to prove their loyalty through acts of extreme violence, a way to affirm their role within the organization. In stark contrast, Kamjesh embodies chaos and flexibility in the criminal world. With no clear hierarchy or supreme leader, Kamjesh exists as a network of small, independently operating groups with a common goal: profit. In Kamjesh, there are no initiation rituals or oaths of loyalty. They unite individuals with the shared purpose of surviving the harsh realities of Kenya's urban slums. Kamjesh is a product of poverty and instability, where people strive to make a living by any means necessary. Kamjesh exploits its decentralized advantage. One Kamjesh group being cracked down on can quickly be replaced by another. There is no centralized leader for authorities to hunt down, nor are there clear bases to track. This freedom makes Kamjesh an elusive enemy. On the flip side, it also creates instability within the group. Unlike Mungiki, where actions are coordinated from the top down, Kamjesh relies on the spontaneity of its members and smaller factions. When we compare Mungiki and Kamjesh, we see a clear opposition. Mungiki represents centralized power, where control is exercised top-down with strict rules. Kamjesh, on the other hand, symbolizes freedom, where individual groups operate independently and are not bound by any ideology. But is centralized power truly the greatest strength? Or is freedom and adaptability the key to survival in the criminal underworld? This is a difficult question to answer, as both models have their own strengths and weaknesses. Mungiki's tight organization allows for long-term control and the execution of large strategies. However, it also makes them vulnerable to exposure if a high-ranking leader is captured or betrays the organization. Conversely, Kamjesh lacks the sustainability of Mungiki but is harder to eradicate due to its decentralization and flexibility. Imagine yourself as a resident in Kenya. On one side, there's Mungiki with its sprawling power network, controlling every aspect of your life. Every service, from clean water to transportation, is under their dominion. They not only take money from your pocket but also dictate how you live. At least, you know who is in control. On the other side, with Kamjesh, you never know where they might appear. They could be your neighbors today, but tomorrow they might turn against you to make a profit. This opposition not only creates two distinct approaches in the underworld but also raises a larger question. Is real strength found in centralized control or in rapid adaptability? This isn't just an issue for the two organizations but a lesson in how power is organized and executed in society. What do you think? If faced with the choice, would you feel more endangered living under Mungiki's comprehensive control or dealing with Kamjesh's unpredictability? The answer likely depends on how you define safety. But one thing is certain: both are threats that cannot be underestimated. In the next part, We will explore how Mungiki and Kamjesh actually operate. Their methods of action not only reveal the nature of the two organizations but also highlight the different ways power is wielded in the underworld. Are there any notable differences? Or are they just two sides of the same coin? Stay tuned to find out more. When discussing how Mungiki and Kamjesh operate, we see clear differences not only in their goals but also in their methods of execution. This reflects not just the nature of the organizations but also how they interact with society and impact the communities around them. Mungiki is a highly strategic organization, and this is evident in how they establish their power. One of the most common methods Mungiki employs is controlling public services in impoverished areas. For instance, in many parts of Kenya, the public transportation system, including buses and trucks, is almost entirely under Mungiki's control. Drivers are forced to pay protection fees to operate, and this fee is not optional. It is a coercion backed by violence. Anyone who dares to refuse or even question it faces brutal consequences. But that's not all. Mungiki doesn't stop at transportation. They also infiltrate the most basic aspects of life, such as providing clean water to residential areas. The concerning issue here is not that they deliver water, a necessity, but how they use it to consolidate power. Clean water, instead of being seen as a basic need, becomes a commodity controlled by Mungiki. Households that fail to pay on time face immediate water cuts or, worse, direct retaliation. Beyond economic activities, Mungiki is also notorious for their political infiltration. In many Kenyan elections, politicians have used Mungiki as a tool to incite violence, intimidate voters, or even eliminate political rivals. This creates a dangerous cycle where criminal organizations like Mungiki not only survive but thrive thanks to covert support from political leaders. This two-way relationship makes dismantling the organization nearly impossible. In contrast, Kamjesh operates in a more spontaneous and direct manner. Kamjesh lacks the ambition for long-term control like Mungiki. They don't aim to control public transport or supply clean water. Instead, Kamjesh's goal is quick profit, which shapes their methods of operation. Kamjesh members are often involved in muggings, personal assaults, and theft. These acts are usually sudden, leaving victims with no time to react. A typical example is street robberies in Nairobi. Kamjesh members often target late-night commuters carrying mobile phones or cash. These attacks not only result in financial losses but leave victims with long-lasting trauma. Kamjesh is unafraid to use violence to achieve their goals. Someone refusing to surrender their belongings may be beaten or, worse, killed. However, Kamjesh doesn't stop at petty crimes. When needed, they can organize larger operations, such as robbing warehouses or hijacking cargo trucks. These heists are usually carried out by small but well-coordinated groups, showing Kamjesh's basic organizational capabilities. Despite the absence of centralized leadership, their flexibility and quick adaptability allow them to survive and thrive in unstable urban environments. The stark difference between the two organizations lies in how they interact with the community. While Mungiki establishes long-term control, turning the community into their customers, Kamjesh views the community as targets. This makes Kamjesh more unpredictable and, in some cases, more dangerous. People living in areas where Kamjesh operates often don't know if they will become victims on any given day. This creates a pervasive fear, not just for individuals but for entire communities. The larger question, however, is, which approach is more dangerous? An organization like Mungiki, where every aspect of your life is under their control, or an organization like Kamjesh, where you never know when you'll be attacked? The answer is not straightforward. Mungiki provides a form of false stability, a stability maintained through violence and coercion. While you are exploited, you at least know who is exploiting you and can learn to live with the flood. On the other hand, Kamjesh embodies chaos. You never know which of your neighbors might be a Kamjesh member or when you will be their next victim. Put yourself in the shoes of a Kenyan resident. Would you choose to live under Mungiki's strict control, where everything has its price, but at least you know what to expect? Or would you take the risk with Kamjesh, where there are no rules except the law of the strongest? This is not an easy question to answer, as both represent different types of threats. One is systematic oppression, and the other is unpredictable chaos. The operational methods of these two organizations not only expose their criminal nature but also highlight deeper issues within Kenyan society. From the government's failure to provide basic services to the persistent poverty in urban areas. Both Mungiki and Kamjesh are products of unresolved societal problems. But are violence and control the only tools these two organizations use to survive? Or do they have other means to assert their power? In the next section, we will delve deeper into the nature of their crimes and methods of enforcement, where their most brutal actions are laid bare. To better understand the essence of Mungiki and Kamjesh, we must look directly at how they exercise their power. This is where the differences between the two organizations are most apparent, not just in the level of violence but also in the purpose behind their actions. What they do not only instills fear but also shapes how they are perceived by society, the government, and even their own members. Mungiki has long been notorious for its strategically brutal methods. They do not merely use violence as a tool but transform it into a symbol of power. One of Mungiki's hallmark actions is public execution, particularly through beheading their victims. Often those who refuse to comply with orders or fail to pay protection fees, are dealt with ruthlessly in public view. Their bodies are often left in crowded areas, serving as a warning that no one can challenge Mungiki's authority without dire consequences. These actions are not just meant to deter but also to reinforce Mungiki's image as an untouchable organization. Each time a person is dealt with, the message is sent not only to the victim but to the entire community. Mungiki wants everyone to understand that they not only control the economy but also hold ultimate power over life and death. This symbolic brutality makes Mungiki more fearsome than any other organization. However, Mungiki does not stop at public violence. They also carry out mass purges, especially in areas where they seek to establish control. These attacks often target communities or groups that resist submission. In a single night, an entire neighborhood might be devastated, with dozens killed and many others severely injured. This is not random violence, it is a way for Mungiki to declare their territory and eliminate any threats. In contrast, Kamjesh does not have grand strategic objectives like Mungiki, and this is reflected in the nature of their crimes. Kamjesh's violence is often random and direct, focusing on petty acts such as mugging, individual assaults, or theft. What makes Kamjesh terrifying is their unpredictability. You never know when, where, or how you might become their target. A typical example is highway robberies, where small groups of Kamjesh block trucks or cars to steal valuables. These incidents often last only a few minutes, but the consequences are significant. If victims cooperate, they may escape with a loss of property. But if they resist, the outcome is often violent or even fatal. The spontaneity and randomness of Kamjesh's actions make them a constant threat in urban areas and along transportation routes. But do not let this randomness fool you. While Kamjesh lacks the long-term strategy of Mungiki, they still have highly effective methods for maintaining their power. One of their most critical tools is personal intimidation. Those who dare to oppose Kamjesh, whether by reporting to the police or simply refusing to pay, often face immediate retaliation. This not only heightens fear within the community but also discourages people from cooperating with the authorities, creating a vicious cycle where Kamjesh can continue to operate unchallenged. The most striking difference lies in how these two organizations use violence to craft their distinct images. While Mungiki's violence is strategic and aimed at long-term power consolidation, Kamjesh's violence is short-term and direct, reflecting survival in a harsh environment. This creates two opposing images: Mungiki as a symbol of control, and Kamjesh as an embodiment of chaos. But is their brutality entirely the same? Or are they simply two different approaches to the same goal, maintaining power? It's a question worth pondering because both organizations inflict irreparable damage on communities. What's even more frightening is that in a society rife with injustice and instability, such brutal actions are seen as necessary for their survival. How would you feel knowing that, for some people in Kenya, Mungiki is not just an oppressor but also a provider? Or that Kamjesh, despite instilling fear, remains the only option for unemployed youth? This not only complicates the story but also shows that sometimes The line between victim and perpetrator is not as clear as we think. Imagine living in a community controlled by Mungiki. Every day, you pay for access to clean water, to travel safely, and even to stay alive. You despise this control, but at least you know that as long as you comply, you are safe. Now imagine living in an area where Kamjesh operates. There is no guarantee that you won't become a target tomorrow. This uncertainty may be even more terrifying than control. The story of Mungiki and Kamjesh is not just about violence but also about how they use violence to shape society. But is there a way to break this vicious cycle? Or has society, with its injustices and failures, created these organizations and continues to sustain them? These are questions we must continue to reflect upon. In the next section, we will weigh all these factors. Mungiki and Kamjesh. Which poses the greater threat? And is there a way for society to break free from their control? Let's delve deeper into the discussion to seek answers. After analyzing the organizational structure, operational methods, and criminal nature of Mungiki and Kamjesh, we arrive at the most critical question: which organization is more dangerous? And why? This is the moment for a comprehensive comparison. While delving deeper into the societal issues that have enabled these two organizations to thrive, the answer is far from simple, as each organization reflects different aspects of a society grappling with inequality, corruption, and failures in governance. Let's begin with Mungiki. For many, Mungiki operates like an underground government, thriving in areas where the official administration cannot reach. This, however, is precisely what makes them exceedingly dangerous. You may despise Mungiki for their comprehensive control, but you cannot deny that, to some, they genuinely provide services neglected by the government. For instance, in areas lacking clean water or public transportation, Mungiki steps in to fill the void, albeit at an exorbitant cost. However, when you pay them, you are not merely buying a service but also acquiescing to their dominance. This is where the fear lies. Mungiki's control does not stop at providing services. They dictate how you live, work, and even think. With a tightly knit organizational structure and deep infiltration into politics, they sustain themselves not only through violence but also through the complicity of leaders. Politicians who collaborate with Mungiki, either overtly or covertly, have made them an inseparable part of Kenya's power structure. This raises the question: is Mungiki merely a criminal organization, or have they become an integral part of the political system? In contrast, Kamjesh does not seek comprehensive control like Mungiki. They do not need ideology or complex structures. All Kamjesh requires is chaos. This chaos is their lifeblood. In urban slums, where making a living is a daily struggle, Kamjesh exists as an embodiment of desperation. They do not provide services or govern communities, they attack and loot. Yet, this unpredictability often makes them even scarier than Mungiki. Imagine living in an area plagued by Kamjesh. There are no warning signs that you will become a target, but that doesn't mean you are safe. A Kamjesh member could be anyone: a neighbor, a vendor, or even a family member. They do not need a reason to act, only an opportunity. This makes them a constant and pervasive threat. But what truly drives Kamjesh? The answer lies in social inequality. In a country where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, while the majority languishes in poverty, organizations like Kamjesh are an inevitable consequence. They are not the product of a grand scheme but rather the result of prolonged failures to build an equitable society. So, between Mungiki and Kamjesh, which is more dangerous? It's a tough question to answer. Mungiki is dangerous because they can manipulate entire systems. From the economy to politics, they turn fear into a tool to maintain and consolidate power. But Kamjesh is equally terrifying, as the chaos they create renders society unpredictable. One represents comprehensive control, while the other embodies complete uncertainty, both symbolizing distinct forms of peril. Yet perhaps the more important question is, how can a society deal with both organizations? For Mungiki, the solution might lie in purging the political system and ensuring no leader collaborates with them. But this is easier said than done. When politicians have grown accustomed to using Mungiki as a tool to achieve their goals, who will truly want change? And even if they do, will they have the strength to implement it? For Kamjesh, the problem lies in the social conditions that give rise to them. To dismantle Kamjesh, you cannot rely solely on crackdowns. You must address the root causes: poverty, unemployment, and inequality. But this is also a monumental task, as these issues are deeply entrenched in the social fabric. When the government is either unable or unwilling to address these problems, Kamjesh will continue to exist as an inevitable product of their environment. Imagine being an ordinary Kenyan citizen. Would you choose to live under Mungiki's comprehensive control, where everything has a price but at least you know who is in charge? Or would you face the uncertainty of Kamjesh, where nothing guarantees your safety tomorrow? It's a choice no one wants to make. Yet for many Kenyans, it is an everyday reality. The story of Mungiki and Kamjesh is not just about crime. It is a story about society, about how injustices and governance failures have created brutal forces and how these forces continue to exist despite efforts to curb them. But is there a way to break this vicious cycle? That is the question we must ask, not just of Kenya, but of any society facing similar challenges. Mungiki controls everything, while Kamjesh thrives on chaos. Both are terrifying in their own way. So, what is the way out for a society engulfed in violence and instability? If you find this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think is truly more dangerous? We'd love to hear from you.